They say revenge is a dish best served cold. I prefer mine at exactly 98.6 degrees, the temperature of betrayal coursing through my veins as I watched my husband hold my sister's hand at my own birthday party. The crystal champagne flute felt impossibly heavy in my hand as I sat at the head table of the Gilded Lily, surrounded by 50 of our closest friends and family members. The restaurant's warm amber lighting cast dancing shadows across faces I had known for years. Faces that would soon witness the most spectacular implosion of my 32 years of life. But unlike every other woman who had discovered her husband's affair, I wasn't going to crumble. I was going to orchestrate. My name is Eleanor Vance. And 6 weeks ago, I was a different person entirely. 6 weeks ago, I believed in the fairy tale. I believed that love conquered all. That family meant everything. And that good people were rewarded for their kindness and sacrifice. 6 weeks ago, I was naive enough to think that the man sleeping beside me every night actually loved me, and that my sister would never betray me in the most fundamental way possible. 6 weeks ago, I discovered that I had been living a lie so elaborate, so carefully constructed, that it made me question everything I thought I knew about myself and the people closest to me. The transformation began on a Tuesday evening in March. Victor had been working late again, or so he claimed, and I was alone in our spacious downtown apartment, trying to distract myself from another failed pregnancy test by organizing our digital photo albums on the family iPad. We had been trying to conceive for 3 years, and each negative test felt like another small death. Another confirmation that something was fundamentally wrong with me. I had always wanted children desperately. Growing up as the responsible older sister to Serafina, I had dreamed of having a large, loving family where I could finally be the one being taken care of instead of always being the caretaker. Victor knew this about me. He had held me through countless nights of tears when my period arrived on schedule month after month. He had rubbed my back when the fertility medications made me sick. He had assured me that we would figure it out together. That maybe the problem wasn't with me at all. That Tuesday night, as I scrolled through years of carefully curated memories, a notification popped up in the corner of the screen. An email to Victor's account, with a subject line that made my blood freeze: our plan. I should have closed it. I should have respected his privacy. But something in my gut, some primal instinct that I had been ignoring for months, made me click. The sender was Sarah, my beautiful, selfish, eternally dissatisfied younger sister who had spent her entire life coveting everything I had. From my clothes in high school to my college acceptance letters to my career success. And now, apparently, my husband. The email chain stretched back months, maybe even years. As I read, my entire world tilted on its axis. They weren't just having an affair, they were systematically dismantling my life with the precision of military strategists. The birthday announcement will be perfect. Sarah had written just days earlier. She'll be so humiliated in front of everyone. And with the divorce papers already prepared, we can move quickly. She's too weak to fight back anyway. Victor's response made my stomach lurch. The Northwood Clinic results will seal it. Once everyone knows she can't have children, no one will blame me for leaving. The property transfers are almost complete. Your mother signed everything. I read the exchange 3 times before the full scope of their betrayal hit me. They weren't just planning to humiliate me publicly, they were stealing from me. The beach house I had inherited from my grandmother. The investment accounts I had built over a decade of careful saving. Even my mother was involved. Signing documents she probably didn't understand. Manipulated by Sarah's tears and Victor's charm. But the cruelest revelation was yet to come. Buried in an earlier email was Victor's casual confession. The doctor confirmed what I already knew. I've been sterile since the motorcycle accident in college. But letting Eleanor think she was the problem was easier than dealing with her disappointment. I sat in the dark of my living room, holding the iPad with shaking hands, and felt something inside me crystallize. Not break, crystallize. Like water becoming ice. Becoming something harder and more dangerous. For 3 years, I had subjected myself to invasive procedures, hormone treatments that made me feel crazy, and the constant shame of believing my body was failing me. For 3 years, Victor had watched me suffer and blame myself for something that was physically impossible. He had lied to doctors. He had lied to me. He had let me think I was broken when he knew the entire time that he was the one who couldn't have children. Which raised the obvious question about Sarah's pregnancy announcement. I called Luke Harrison at 11 that night. Luke had been my closest friend since law school. The one person who had always seen through Victor's charm to the calculating man beneath. When he answered, his voice thick with sleep, I was surprised by how calm I sounded. Luke, I need your help with something. And I need you to not ask questions until I'm done explaining. Ellie, what's wrong? They think they've won, I said, staring at my reflection in the dark window. But they don't understand. This isn't their game anymore. It's mine. The next 6 weeks were the most focused period of my life. While Victor and Sarah continued their charade, believing me oblivious, I became a detective in my own life. Luke, bless him, asked no questions as he helped me trace financial records, access medical files, and document everything with the thoroughness of the prosecutor he had trained to be. The Northwood Clinic was our first breakthrough. Using his legal credentials, Luke obtained Victor's complete medical history. The motorcycle accident Victor had mentioned in his email had indeed left him completely sterile, a fact that was clearly documented in his file. The diagnosis was unambiguous: 0 sperm motility, permanent sterility. He had known for over a decade that he could never father children. But the financial investigation yielded even more damaging information. Detective Miller, the private investigator Luke recommended, was worth every penny. Within 2 weeks, he had uncovered a trail of financial manipulation that went back over a year. Victor had been systematically draining our joint accounts, using a series of cash withdrawals and transfers to fund not just his affair with Sarah, but an entirely separate life. He had rented her an apartment across town, bought her a car, even opened credit cards in my name to pay for her shopping sprees. The beach house, my grandmother's beach house, had been quietly transferred to my mother's name, ostensibly for tax purposes, but actually to remove it from our marital assets before the divorce. The most audacious theft was from his own company. Over $200,000 in client funds had been borrowed to purchase a downtown condo that was now sitting in my mother's name. Victor clearly planned to weather the divorce storm and then have Sarah and my mother transfer everything back to him once the dust settled. As I gathered evidence, I felt a strange calm descending over me. This wasn't just about revenge anymore, it was about justice. It was about making sure that everyone who had betrayed me faced the full consequences of their actions. The hardest part was maintaining the facade. For 6 weeks, I continued to be the loving wife, the devoted daughter, the caring sister. I attended family dinners, where my mother praised Victor's dedication to making our family stronger. I smiled when Sarah casually mentioned how glowing she looked lately. I even let Victor comfort me when I had another failed pregnancy test, watching him lie to my face with an indone, ease that should have terrified me. But I was no longer the woman who had stumbled across that first email. I was someone else entirely, someone who could smile while planning the total destruction of everything they thought they had built on my suffering. The birthday party was my idea. Victor had suggested a quiet dinner, just family. But I insisted on something bigger. I want to celebrate properly, I told him. 32 feels like a new beginning. He agreed, probably delighted at the prospect of humiliating me in front of a larger audience. I chose the Gilded Lily specifically because it was Victor's favorite restaurant, the place where he had proposed to me 5 years earlier. The irony felt appropriate. I also made sure to invite everyone who mattered: our friends, my colleagues, both sides of the family. If this was going to be a show, it deserved a proper audience. The evening began exactly as I had anticipated. Victor was charming, playing the devoted husband with an expertise that reminded me why I had fallen for him in the first place. Sarah arrived fashionably late, wearing a flowing dress that subtly emphasized her supposedly growing belly, accepting compliments on her glow with practiced modesty. My mother, Patricia, was particularly effusive in her praise of Victor, going on about how lucky I was to have such a supportive husband during our difficult time. She had always preferred Sarah, my beautiful, dramatic younger sister who needed constant rescue from her own poor decisions. I had long ago accepted that I would always be the responsible one, the one who took care of everyone else's messes. But tonight, that dynamic was about to shift permanently. As the evening progressed, I watched Victor and Sarah exchange glances across the table. They thought they were being subtle, but I could read the anticipation in their body language. They were waiting for their moment, probably planning to make their announcement during the toast. I decided not to give them the satisfaction of taking the lead. As the dessert course was being served, a beautiful chocolate cake with 32 candles, I stood up and tapped my champagne glass. The conversation died down as 50 faces turned toward me expectantly. "Thank you all for being here tonight," I began, my voice steady and warm. Birthdays are supposed to be about reflecting on the year past and looking forward to what's coming. And I have to say, this year has been full of surprises. Victor shifted uncomfortably in his seat. He hadn't expected me to take control of the narrative. I've learned so much about myself, about what I'm capable of, about what I will and won't tolerate. I let my eyes sweep the room, landing briefly on each person who had betrayed me. I've also learned some fascinating things about the people closest to me. Sarah was starting to look nervous now, her hand unconsciously moving to her stomach. "Victor, my dear husband," I continued, turning to face him directly. "You've been so supportive during our struggles with fertility, so understanding when I blamed myself for our problems, so patient with my disappointment month after month." He managed a weak smile. "Of course. Honey, we're a team." "A team," I repeated thoughtfully. "Yes, that's one way to put it." I reached into my purse and pulled out a manila envelope. "Speaking of teams, I have something for you. Darling, consider it a birthday gift." I placed the envelope in front of him. His face went pale as he recognized the Northwood Clinic letterhead visible through the transparent window. "This is interesting reading," I said conversationally. "Your complete medical records from the clinic, including the results from your fertility tests, the real ones, not the fake ones you showed me." The silence in the restaurant was deafening. I could feel 50 pairs of eyes watching this drama unfold. But I no longer cared. This moment had been building for 6 weeks, and I was going to savor every second of it. "It turns out," I continued, "that you've been completely sterile since your motorcycle accident in college. Fascinating how you let me think I was the problem for 3 years. Isn't it?" Victor's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. Sarah had gone completely white, her hand now clutching her stomach as the implications hit her. "Which brings us to an interesting question," I said, turning to face my sister. "If my husband can't have children, Sarah, whose baby are you actually carrying?" The gasps from around the room were audible now. I could see my mother trying to process what she was hearing, confusion and horror warring on her face. Sarah tried to speak, but only a strangled sound came out. Victor jumped to his feet, knocking over his chair. "Ellie, you don't understand." "Oh, but I do understand." I cut him off. "I understand perfectly. I understand that you've been stealing from me for over a year. I understand that you've manipulated my mother into signing over property that doesn't belong to her. I understand that you embezzled over $200,000 from your company to buy a condo that you planned to hide from me in the divorce." Luke, who had been sitting quietly beside me throughout dinner, reached into his jacket and pulled out a thick folder. He placed it on the table with a soft thud. "Financial records," Luke said simply. "Bank transfers, credit card statements, property transfers, company accounts. All documented and verified." Victor lunged toward the table. Whether to grab the documents or attack me, I wasn't sure. But Luke was faster, standing up and blocking Victor's path while 2 waiters appeared as if from nowhere to restrain him. "Don't," Luke warned quietly. "You're already facing embezzlement charges. Assault won't help your case." The restaurant had descended into chaos. Other diners were staring openly now, some recording with their phones. My carefully planned evening was becoming exactly the public spectacle I had intended. "You're insane." Sarah finally found her voice, tears streaming down her face. "You've lost your mind. Eleanor. This is justice," I said simply. I turned to my mother, who was sitting in stunned silence. "And Patricia, that lovely new house you're so proud of? The one Victor bought with stolen money? I'm afraid his company is going to want that back very soon, along with everything else purchased with embezzled funds." My mother's face crumpled as the reality of her situation hit her. She had been so eager to believe that Victor genuinely cared about her, so pleased to finally have a son-in-law who treated her like family. She hadn't bothered to ask where the money was coming from. "Please," Sarah whispered, reaching for my hand. "Ellie. Please. I'm pregnant. I can't be hard bin." I pulled my hand away from her touch. "You should have thought about that before you decided to destroy my life for fun." I paused, studying her tear-streaked face. "Although, you might want to call Ryan. He has a right to know he's going to be a father." The mention of Ryan, Sarah's ex-boyfriend from 2 years ago, the one she had never quite gotten over, sent another shockwave through the room. Even Victor looked confused now, apparently unaware of who had actually fathered the child he thought was his. I picked up my purse and turned to leave, Luke falling into step beside me. As we reached the door, I paused and looked back at the wreckage of my former life. "One last thing," I called out, my voice carrying clearly across the silent restaurant. "Victor, you might want to call a good lawyer. The FBI tends to take embezzlement cases very seriously, especially when they involve client funds." The door of the Gilded Lily swung shut behind us, cutting off the sound of Sarah's sobbing and Victor's desperate attempts to explain himself to anyone who would listen. Outside, Luke handed me my coat with a gentle smile. "Feel better?" "You know what?" I said, breathing deeply of the cool night air. "I really do." The next few months passed in a blur of legal proceedings and paperwork. Victor was arrested 2 days after the birthday party, when his company's investigation confirmed the embezzlement and reported it to federal authorities. The news made the local business section, complete with his mugshot and details about the elaborate scheme to defraud clients and hide assets during divorce proceedings. Sarah, meanwhile, had to face the consequences of her choices without the safety net she had been counting on. Ryan, the real father of her baby, wanted nothing to do with either her or the child when he learned about the deception. She was forced to move back in with our mother, who was facing her own financial crisis as creditors sought to recover the stolen money. The divorce proceedings were swift and decisive. With Luke's help and the mountain of evidence we had gathered, Victor's lawyers advised him to accept whatever terms I offered rather than risk additional criminal charges. I walked away with everything that had been mine originally, plus significant damages for the theft and emotional distress. My mother and I haven't spoken since the night of the party. She chose to stand by Sarah, claiming that I had destroyed the family with my vindictive behavior. Part of me was sad about losing that relationship, but I realized that it had been built on a foundation of my willingness to always be the one who sacrificed for everyone else's comfort. Without that dynamic, there wasn't much left between us. 6 months later, I was sitting in a pottery studio in Portland, Oregon, my hands covered in clay as I shaped what would become a large decorative bowl. I had moved across the country after the divorce. Wanting a fresh start somewhere, nobody knew my story. The pottery class had been a whim, something to fill the empty hours. But I discovered that I loved the meditative process of creation, the way something beautiful could emerge from formless earth with patience and skill. Luke visited me regularly, having taken a position with a Portland law firm partly to be closer to his traumatized best friend, and partly because he had always wanted to live in the Pacific Northwest. He was sitting across from me now, attempting to center his own lump of clay on the wheel with limited success. "Any word from the happy family?" he asked, not looking up from his work. "Victor got 5 years," I said, adding another coil to my bowl's rim. "Sarah had the baby last month. A girl. And nothing. That part of my life is over." Luke. They're not my responsibility anymore. He glanced up at me. Clay streaked across his cheek. You sound different when you talk about it now. Less angry. I considered this as I smoothed the clay with my fingers. He was right. The burning rage that had sustained me through those weeks of planning and executing my revenge had cooled into something else, not indifference. Exactly. But a kind of peaceful detachment. I used to think that my value came from how much I could endure, how much I could give, how useful I could be to other people. I said. I measured my worth by how well I could absorb everyone else's problems and still smile. And now? Now I understand that love, real love, doesn't require you to set yourself on fire to keep other people warm. That night, I sat on my apartment balcony looking out over Portland. I had bought a single orchid from a nursery, marked down because it looked half dead. With proper care, it was now producing extraordinary purple blooms. I thought about that orchid often. It had seemed hopeless, but was really just planted in the wrong place. I wasn't broken either. I had just been surrounded by people who saw my strength as something to exploit rather than cherish. My phone buzzed with a text from Luke. Dinner tomorrow? Found a place that makes incredible Thai food. Can't wait. I texted back, smiling. The best revenge wasn't making them suffer. It was building a life so beautiful, so authentically mine, that their absence felt not like a loss, but like a gift.